bit old school in that regard. That whole sort of grim and gritty, attitude that still pervades to a degree. I mean, I used to make a joke like, especially when there was that crisis on Infinite Earth when Dr. Light, murdered and raped Sue Dibney. I mean, here's a guy who has a fin on his head, wears white underpants on the outside, and has the name Dr. Light, you know what I mean? And then to take that and put it into a Law and Order SVU kind of world I don't know, I found it off-putting. I don't think, when I want to see that kind of entertainment, I can watch that kind of thing or watch a movie about serial killers.
I agree 100%.
And
I really
some
do.
of that innocence, I mean, it's there in pockets nowadays, but it's why I find myself, revering the likes of you and what you did in those days.
Like you say, there's pockets of it.
Right.
Kind of like, digging a bomb shelter in your backyard while everybody else is just being overrun by this. Actually, modern comics are like zombies in a way.
Yeah.
They're kind of the living dead.
Yeah. I'm
it's
only
like, where's
reading
the?
two right now.
How can you have the dark? I mean, one of the main things about literature is, it's a game of contrasts. If everything's the same, what's the point, right?
Right.
So if Superman has got problems and he cries and he's got a dark side, Superman.
It kind of goes against the whole escapist nature. What am I escaping to? Back to reality? Except he's got a big S on his chest, But now he's dealing with mass,
I know. It's worse than reality. It's grim, and sometimes comics like to see themselves as, they don't really set a pace. They kind of follow what's actually happening out in the world, They've never... guys like Neil Adams, who is a true believer, not in the sense of Stan Lee's true believer, but there's a lot of accomplished artists who believe in the power of comics, and he thinks. I've heard him talk about, comics were on the cutting edge, like for instance during women's lib era and civil rights and so on. But actually, they were kind of following what was actually going along. These characters, in my opinion, these characters appeared in comics not first, but they followed what was happening in the news, So...
Or they put what was happening into a context maybe that could help, the readers, the younger readers as well.
Well, it spread the word, kind of thing. Yeah.
But there was a positive message, wasn't there, at the end?
There was.
Whereas now it seems this stuff is dystopian as the society we're living in. There's, instead of expressing that positivity, or you just have...
And that really started in the movies as well.
Yeah.
Where they're either
cynical,
anti-hero, dark kind of. You can't deny the idea that people have different personalities and different backgrounds and different experiences, and there's no human being that hasn't had a dark experience. So, that part, depending on how much of it they've experienced, it becomes part of it goes into your hard drive, and it becomes part of your character and your nature. I mean, everybody has the capacity for this darkness based on, depending on the level of the experience, But, basically, if you have problems, you try to find the sunny side of it, because it makes living easier. And people that can't, you get help. You get either through therapy or medication. Of course, there are hopeless cases, probably like this guy that went into the airport into LAX yesterday, but, that are very difficult to retrieve. but everybody wants to be comfortable and, and have a relative degree of security and happiness,
Right.
So I get bummed out on if I'm confronted with too much darkness. I mean, you can't have Edgar Allan Poe all the way across the board.
Right.
You need stories like A Christmas Carol. It turns, where you begin with the darkness and then it's contrasted by the light that occurs at the end of the story. And they're the most satisfying stories to me. I mean, they really are.
You're very strongly associated with the Hulk and, of course, G.I. Joe. But what character or series do you yourself most commonly connect to?
The Hulk.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Right.
I've been called the Hulk.
Well, you're the Hulk artist to me.
Not because of the Hulk artist.
Yeah.
Just the way I behave.
Because you can go into a "you wouldn't like me when I'm angry" kind of thing, right?
I know.
I find that hard to believe, laughing like this. Was the Phantom Eagle your answer to Enemy Ace?
No.
A good German in World War I?
No. I would never have assumed that.
There's some parallels to,
well, there's no parallels in the drawing, though. I can tell you that.
No, not at all. But in terms of a good German character in World War I, some similarities.
Well, the thing is, in aviation in those days, there, even if there were brutalities, even if it's kind of mythological about how they treated each other as prisoners with kinder or with more compassion because they did the same kind of dangerous thing that they were doing. I mean, I don't know how true any of that is, but people that fly tend to stick together.
Right, that was that code of...
Yeah, there's no question about it. There's like an appreciation for those that do that kind of thing, there's a bond. I mean, there's no question about it. There's a bond. Well, I came into the offices at Marvel Comics on a suggestion from a buddy I had in art school that was now the production chief there, John Verport. And I showed work I had. I didn't have any new stuff, but I did show work I had to Saul Brodsky, who was kind of the office manager. And I got inking work right away. But when I started to pencil the Hulk, a lot of my layouts and storytelling were small panels, very concise, precise. The character, I was kind of drawn in a Jack Davis style. It was a little cartoony, which now you can get away with.
Yeah.
But you couldn't. These guys that are, every time I look at half the comics today, I'm saying Stan would have never hired these guys.
Right.
I mean, he would have hired Jim Lee, but he never would have hired, say, Rob Liefeld, who I admire all of those guys because they brought, if anything, a new life to comics, to what was being done. And art isn't art unless there's change. You need to have. There needs to be a kind of a creative progress that is always open to new ideas. So even if you don't agree with the new ideas, I agree with the process of coming up with new ideas.
Sure.
Totally. It's probably the reason I wound up working there, because I couldn't draw near as well as any of the guys that were already established there. Kirby in my mind is like still the king, but I was just not, I couldn't draw like John Buscema. these beautiful drawings.
Right.
I couldn't draw like the Colans and Ramitas, and I mean it just went on and on and on and on.
But you have your own look, your own style.
Well,
And, I mean, if you want Buscema, go there, and if you want something that's all
Yeah.
shadowy, go to Colin, and if you want something that's got a lot of energy and clean lines and very sort of graphically, bold, turn to you. I loved
that's
your
good.
comics equally along those guys, and
I-
and you were all masters of your own sort of style. But
Well, that
unlike
is-
say a lot of what I want to touch on, like this image style that's just all this cross-hatch, like
I know it. I know.
lines, like they look like they have paper cuts all over their bodies and faces, and it just
Terrible.
bad anatomy and proportions, and
I know what you mean.
inability to drop feet properly.
Well, I was always shy
9
about.
foot tall people. If you look at the actual musculature of it, it's not good art, I think, and like. You know what I mean? And I never went with that.
I'm not going to say
Look.
I agree with you, but
Right, I
I
understand.
agree with you.
Sure, yeah.
No,
But-
because the thing is, it's very distorted, and I think a lot of the appeal, and a lot of it came from people who were formerly fans. And in fact, even the editorial end of it, after a while, was instead of being populated with people who were publishing professionals, they became populated with editors who came from the fan side of comics. Therefore, since most people don't draw very well, I mean, they used to when they were kids, but they give up on it at some point. There was a certain fan appeal in the art because it looked like fan art. I still look at stuff in comics and it looks like fan art from 50 years ago, And even though the draftsmanship might have an excitement to it or appeal. I mean, I understand the appeal, but I just, some of it makes me cringe. but I hate to admit it to anybody because my own work at the time made me cringe.
But let me ask you, Herb, about most fans associate you with your incredible body of comics work, but there's another side to you as an ordained minister. And how does
Well, it's a deacon.
a deacon? Okay.
Yeah.
Episcopalian, right?
Episcopalian, yeah.
How does faith influence or inspire your work? Since you, does it? I think we touched on some of this stuff, the hopefulness or that upbeat quality.
I don't know.
Can you marry gay people?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's enough positive.
Yeah, well, if you want to.
If you want to or not,
want to,
or they want to, right?
Whatever you want to do.
But,
Well, the thing is,
I mean, you wrote The Power of Angels.
as powerful as the Catholic Church has always been, and when they were singularly the only church in the Mediterranean area, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, up to us there was a certain point in the history of mankind where marriage was a civil ceremony. It was a civil ceremony. It had nothing to do with religion. It had to do with your own personal beliefs and whether or not you wanted to be with that person.
That's right.
And whether or not the community, at the levels to which they supported you and so on and so forth.
Like it was handled at
was
like
handled-
a local level, like in a village.
Yeah, it was like
or-
getting your
that's right.
driver's license.
Yeah,
You know? I mean, that's what it was like. It was like getting your driver's.
A marriage license.
But
right.
when the church co-opted many things, and there's liturgies, because the Episcopal Church follows in the same pattern as the Catholic Church does. The liturgy is almost identical. Prayer books are just about identical. The hymnals are just about identical. The main difference is that the Episcopal Church, because of the Church of England and Henry VIII, who created the church because he wanted to get rid of his
divorce,
wife.
right? Yeah.
It's kind of, so when God works in mysterious ways, yeah, you can actually say that this corrupt king, like, you know, he wants to get laid somewhere else, you know.
Right.
You know? But and saying that, the church co-opted a lot of things that were really civilian, like burial services. That's another one.
In traditions, I mean, pagan traditions and things, you know.
People had their own ways to deal with that. Right. But then it became a sacrament with the church. Marriage became a sacrament with the church. And when you have a sacrament, that brings in issues of sin, of erring, of making mistakes, you know.
And control.
Right. So people now, you know, they're going to get married. And actually, it's been dismissed. But right away, when you make something so important that if you fuck it up, you're not seen well in the eyes of God. That creates areas of guilt when things go wrong. You know, huge areas of guilt. You just can't say, well, look, you know, we're not getting along very well. You know, like, you know, and I think it's time. And then the other person will say, no, I think you're absolutely right about that. You know, so why don't we just go our own separate ways, make our peace? You know, you take the 54-inch television set, and I'll take the car, and you know, whatever. And it's kind of amicable. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If it's a civil, I mean, there's always emotion involved. I'm just bullshitting here, you know, in that respect. But there's always heavy emotion involved, no matter what. But when guilt comes into it, you wind up with situations where, like in my parents' generation, divorce was like taboo. And that was even in the Protestant churches, you know. Nobody got divorced. And when you
like that old joke, you know, the 80-year-old couple at divorce court, and the judge is like, why did you wait so long? And it's like, well, we wanted to wait till all the children were dead. You know? It's like you just didn't do it.
Yeah, you know, so it made things very guilt is something that just people just kind of like fall into.
What advice would you give to young artists coming up today?
The hardest one to get was a bit from the 90s.
I think it works with any other type of employment. It's always not necessarily how good you are. There's a lot of luck involved, and especially in comics, it doesn't hurt to know somebody that's close in the business itself. You know, I mean, I had a connection with somebody who already worked at Marvel, and that was a big help in getting me in there. But as far as a magic formula, you know, I mean, I was lucky. I didn't really work at it. I just fell into it and I had a job, you know. Stan liked my storytelling, case closed.
Have you talked to Stan while you've been here this weekend?
He came over, he was coming through with Max, his handler.
Right.
And
I saw some.
he stopped. Stan stopped.
Right.
And what I was surprised when, you know, we gave each other a big hug. I mean, he wasn't in the days a hugger.
Right.
But when you get older, you get to be a hugger.
Right.
Because life is sliding away.
It's like all the rock bands that make up and go on one last tour or something, do reunions and stuff.
Yeah.
Guys that couldn't stand each other when they were 30 and 40.
But the guy's like, you know, he's very thin and trim.
Yeah, I saw him
but he's hard as a rock.
Yeah.
I mean, really, he's not a soft old man.
Fit, yeah.
He's fit. You know, you can tell.
Yeah.
You know. No, Stan is.
What's the rarest?
And I told everybody there was a bunch of people.
It's good that you're on good terms, you know, given, you know, like all the bad things that have been said about him by others in the business.
I said to the people standing there, I said, if he hadn't hired me, if Stan hadn't hired me, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. That's the difference. It was the difference between having a job that went on for 30 years where we did very well and maybe, I mean, I was all set to go work at, I had a couple of possibilities at that time. One job I worked at was an optical company. It was very good, and they had benefits and stuff, and I worked in shipping, and I liked it, you know, because it was organizing, making lists and getting stuff ready to go out to clients and stuff like buyers and stuff. You know, I thought it was a pretty good job, but it wasn't for Stan. You know, I just drew for fun then, you know. It was,
Yeah, it's like, you know.
but it was total luck, you know. The only thing I would say in concrete, like proactive, would be, you know, just keep doing what you're doing. The longer you stay at it, the better chance you're getting.
Tenacity and persistence.
Yeah.
Don't quit, huh?
Don't quit.
That's just
Don't
a good
quit.
general life lesson, no matter what you do.
It is.
I need to remind myself.
Well, there's a point sometimes where you need to quit. You know, I mean, and maybe take a lesser thing. But while you're doing the lesser thing, or the thing, it might not be a lesser thing, it's just not the thing you want to do the most.
I'm sorry. What?
During that period, you know, you can still plow along. And, like, I still try to write. I'm still trying to write books. You know, and I don't have a lot of time to do it, but I eventually get blocks of time, and I'll do something that moves ahead. But persistence.
Okay.
To all you folks out there, persistence.
Okay.
Even if you're robbing banks. No, I didn't say that. Don't say that. You take that.